Hey everybody, what is going on? Hexlex here with another Master Duel video for you guys. So today I'm going to be featuring a deck that is not Sword Soul Tenyi or Xiezhi like I normally do when I'm laddering up here. This is currently the second night of laddering at the time that I'm recording this, and I did just make my way up to Diamond fairly recently with Sword Soul. I'm actually at Diamond 4 now. I made my way up to Diamond 5 with Sword Soul there, but then once I hit Diamond 5, I moved into this deck, which I saw a few people recommend and I had heard about before, and I just wanted to give it a try myself, and that is Virtual World with the Punk engine. You know, I haven't called Punk Virtual World here, but it's not really a hybrid of the two archetypes so much as just utilizing a few of the Punk cards in the main deck as well. Now, the build more or less still plays the same, but there are actually many more not many more, but a few other important combo lines to know, and that's basically, you know, utilizing the Punk engine to help the Virtual Worlds. Now, how does that happen? So, Virtual Worlds, as many of you also pointed out in the comments, is a very good deck, but also tends to brick quite a bit. Because in order to basically get anything going with Virtual Worlds, you need to have a Virtual World card already on the board, and that can sometimes be a little bit tricky to do, especially getting a spell or a trap on the board, which is typically ideal. You can still make some Virtual World plays if you start off with a monster, but again, it is typically ideal to have a spell or a trap, but you know, we don't always open with a Kauwloon or a Qinglong, or even just another like good Virtual World to summon. Like usually Nyannyan is what we prefer to summon. If we have to like normal summon a virtual monster in order to start our Virtual World plays. And sometimes we just open like, you know, Lili, but then a bunch of like hand traps and other non, you know, Virtual World cards. And yeah, like I said, the deck can just be a little bit prone to breaking. I definitely noticed that when I was practicing myself, but I'd heard, you know, in my research, and then also people in the comments were telling me that adding the Punk engine of Amin, and mainly Amin and Amin rather here, and Foxy Tune, but there are also a couple other cards. Like I'm also playing one Ogre Dance. You could also play, if you wanted to, let's see, where is a Madam Spider, as well as the Jury Punk Dangerous. We experimented with that a little bit in the Limit 1 Festival. You could play those if you wanted to, but I opted for a couple of other options I'll talk about here instead. But yeah, so basically how this helps Virtual to unbreak is that you use Amin's effect to add Foxy Tune, then you can use Foxy Tune's effect to summon another Amin from your deck, or just if you want to, you can do the Ogre Dance if you really wanted, but usually just another Amin, and then from there you can go into good old Halki Fibrax. Yeah, we're introducing the Hulk Auroradon line into now Virtual World, as well as, you know, how we had it in Sword Soul Tenyi in the past. But now we get to throw it into Virtual World as well, which adds a new layer of play to the deck, as before Virtual World was only Synchro and Xyz. But now you have a couple of link options. Well, not like a dedicated link option, but just a couple of link plays here. So basically the idea is you go into Hulk summons Deskbot. From there you link into Auroradon, summon your 3 tokens, get your Deskbot back. Those of you who have are familiar with Sword Soul Tenyi, or pretty much any Hulk Auroradon deck, are familiar with that. Then from there what we do is we synchro using the Deskbot and one of our tokens in order to go into Cupid Pitch, which is a card that came out relatively recently here. That's going to pretty much enable this whole line here. Cupid Pitch is a synchro tuner, and then when it's summoned you can either increase or decrease its level by 1. You never ever want to increase its level by 1. You always decrease in this deck, so then it becomes a level 3, because then you can sync with the other you know, Mecha Phantom tokens off of Auroradon, and then from there you can go into either a level 6 or a 9. Now if you're playing Zolkin plus Crystal Wing, then you definitely want to sync into a 6. For my build, I still haven't crafted those yet. I'm basically waiting until the next pack with Flows and Adventures comes out, and then depending on how many gems I have left after, you know, building all the decks I want to with that, and B, the state of the meta and how good Virtual World actually is going to be, then I might commit to crafting Zolkin and Crystal Wing, which is definitely the optimal way. I will admit, is definitely the optimal way to play the build. You can get away without it like I did here, but it's definitely more optimal to play Zulkin and Crystal Wing. Since I'm not playing Zulkin and Crystal Wing, I'm usually going to be using Cupid Pitch and both tokens to go into a 9, usually Shen. But either way, you have to go into either Jiujiu. I think somebody in a comment actually told me how to pronounce this and I totally just forgot, so sorry if you did. But you have to go into one of your Virtual World Synchro monsters, because that's how you're going to establish a Virtual World card on the board. Cupid Pitch not only will enable us to synchro, but then also when it sends us material, you can add any level 8 or lower monster with exactly 600 defense from deck to hand. And it just so happens that both Lili and Lulu, two of our best Virtual World starters, happen to have exactly 600 defense points. So that is how the Punk engine helps the Virtual World plays get going. And it's not only good for unbricking our hands, right, but also the Punk engine makes for great Ash bait. Ash being one of the hand traps that actually really hurts us. Virtual World is kind of, I don't know about infamously, at least to me it's infamous, but it's pretty notoriously, I guess that's a better word, notoriously immune to, or at least gets around disruption like Valor and Imperm very easily, like onboard removal, because Virtual World doesn't really need to activate any onboard effects in order to get its combos going, right? It just needs to, it basically activates all its effects from like hand and or graveyard in order to get their combo lines established. So Ash is then really one of the cards that can hurt us, but again, we can bait that using the Punk engine, particularly Amin. It's also totally fine to use our normal summon on Amin, because we really don't care about our normal summon as Virtual World. We often don't ever need it, because we can just get a Virtual World card online, and then from there all of our Virtual World monsters just special themselves. So you'll also see in these games coming up, and in other games I've played with this deck, you'll see examples where like you'll normal summon the Amin and then activate its effect, and your opponent might Ash it, or they might use another piece of disruption on it because they think, oh, my opponent's committed to normal summoning this monster already. Okay, I'll just go ahead and use my disruption on it, because what else can they really do with no other cards on the board and their normal summon used up? And it's like, well, it's Virtual World, we can do plenty. We can definitely do plenty. So yeah, the Punk engine really does add a whole other dimension of play. It does add a Garnet in the form of Deskbot 001, but one Garnet is totally fine. We did have to scale back a few ratios a little bit in order to include not only the Punk engine, but some cards to kind of like help the Punk engine a little bit. Particularly, we had to cut back from 3 Qinglong to 2, and then 2 Nyannyan to 1. It is optimal, ideally, to be playing, 3 and 2 of those cards respectively, but it's definitely, the extra copies are cuttable, is what I meant to say there. Again, not only do we need to add the bare minimum of what you need to add for the Punk engine is just the Amin and the Foxy tune. I decided to add the Ogre dance because it's nice to be able to search the Amin if you need it. This can also be particularly good Ash bait as well. But also there are times where you'll open both Amin and Foxy tune. It's actually happened to me quite a bit. It could just be variance, of course. It probably is just variance. But in the bit of testing I've done with the deck, it's actually happened to me quite a bit. So it's nice to have something else to add with the Amin. Again, just to use as Ash bait. That's especially nice because you can go, like, even if you already have the Foxy tune in hand, you'll go Amin, activate, they'll Ash it, and it's like, well, you were just going to add an Ogre dance anyway, which really wasn't going to do that much for us, or anything at all for us, really. Whereas if you're not playing another Punk monster, then you don't even get the option, because Amin can't add another copy of itself, so you don't even get the option to activate the effect, which again could bait a very important Ash. Again, other options, you could be playing Madam Spider and the Joypunk Dangerous. Joypunk Dangerous being a pretty generic, monster effect negate, and then Madam Spider adding aforementioned generic effect negate, as well as being other good things to search off of ZMA. Definitely not necessary though. That's a little bit win more. I opted for a couple of copies of Crossout Designator instead, which I was already playing in the build, but this particular variant is a little bit more susceptible to like Nibiru, so definitely good to have the Crossout Designator for that. And then also we do become a little bit more susceptible to Impermanent Valor because now we're using Halki Firex and Auroradon, so if you're going for that combo line, those can get Valored and Impermed, which is why I've also added an effect Valor here as a way to hit with Crossout Designator. Again, as opposed to just 2 Imperm, we're playing one of each for the Designator, which does actually come up, as we'll see in the example games coming up here. So If you're curious about more differences between Punk Virtual World and Pure Virtual World, feel free to check out MasterDuelMeta.com's very, very extensive and very good guide on Virtual World. And towards the bottom, you'll find various tabs that show like combo guides, and there's also a couple of tabs that show like the Punk engine, Punk deck list, and Punk combo guide. So those were a large part of the resources that I used. I'll be sure to link them down in the description. If I haven't, feel free to yell at me and I'll throw it in. But those are a very large resource that I used to help learn this variant of Virtual World and learn just how much it does help the deck. So from what I understand too, Cupid Pitch and like VFD were never legal at the same time, so this is kind of like a new to Master Duel take on Virtual World. So that's kind of cool that Master Duel is enabling like new builds that haven't ever been possible in the TCG or OCG. So alright, now that I've talked about a little bit about the build and how it works, let's go ahead and break it down card by card, detailing each card, and then we'll go ahead and take a look at some example gameplay. So we've got 1 Effect Failure, 1 Deskbot 001, 3 Maxx, 3 Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring, 1 Virtual World Hime Nyannyan, 3 Virtual World Mai-Hime Lulu, 2 Virtual World Xiezhi, or Jiji, I think, Jiji, 3 Noh-P.U.N.K Amin, 2 Virtual Roshi Laolao, 3 Virtual Kirin Lili, 1 Noh-P.U.N.K Foxy Tune, 1 Noh-P.U.N.K Ogre Dance, 1 Nibiru the Primal Being, 3 Virtual City Kauwloon, 2 Virtual Gate Qinglong, 2 Emergency Teleport, 2 Call by the Grave, 2 Crossout Designator, 1 Infinite Impermancence, 2 Virtual Gate Chuche, and 1 Virtual Gate Xuanwu. Extra deck's going to have 1 Cupid Pitch, 1 Stardust Charge Warrior, 1 Coral Dragon, 1 Virtual Beast, again, Jiujiu, 1 Cloudcastle, 1 Vermilion Dragon Mech, 1 Ravenous Croco Dragon Arceus, 1 Virtual QB Shen, 1 Constellar Ptolmy M7, 1 Virtual Phoenix Fan, 1 Gaia Dragon the Thunder Charger, 1 True King of All Calamities, 1 Divine Arsenal Azus Sky Thunder, 1 Crystron Halki Fibrax, and then 1 Mecha Phantom Beast Oberon. So actually a couple other things I wanted to mention that I forgot to earlier was talk about E-Tele. E-Tele is especially good in this variant because Amin is a Psychic that is level 3, so we can get that with Emergency Teleport, another way to start potential combo lines right there. Oh, and then the other thing about the Punk engine I wanted to mention is that instead of Ogre Dance, you could also just run a second Foxy Tune if you wanted. But like I said, I like the 1 Ogre Dance instead because you can just straight up discard it and then add the Amin if you need to search for it that way. Hasn't come up for me yet, but again, it's just I think that I like that a little bit better than the second Foxy Tune, but definitely both are viable. So, yeah, like I mentioned earlier, now that we've gone through the list here, let's go ahead and take a look at some gameplay. Okay, so this first game here is going to be against Xiezhi, and this is going to be a good example of using the Punk engine as bait, even though we don't necessarily need it to combo off. And I'll demonstrate that here with the opening hand. Well, actually, the opponent's going to go first here, so, but we see our opening hand, and we've got, actually, this is a really, really good opening hand. Opening Lulu and Kauwloon, obviously great. Crossout Designator to back them up is great. We've got the Imperm for disruption here on the opponent's turn, and then we also open our Amin. So we can actually, not only do we have the Crossout Designator for backup, we can even bait our opponent's plays out with the Amin, or our opponent's responses out with the Amin, rather. Here our opponent's doing a pretty standard kit line. Once they move into the Chaos and banish the 2, I'm going to of course drop the Imperm in order to stop them. Now they are going to have the Crossout Designator for this, so they are going to stop that. So they're going to set up the Revolt here. So that's why it becomes important to use this Amin as bait. And I alluded to this in the deck profile. This is actually the game I was thinking of in particular. When I said that sometimes you use your normal summon for Amin, and that will lead your opponent to using a response because they figure, oh, you've got no other cards on board, and you've already used your normal summon, what else could you possibly do? And it's like, well, again, we're Virtual World, we can do plenty, I assure you. Plenty, definitely. Interestingly, another thing to note here, minor thing that our opponent did was they went for a Ferrigite instead of Bearbrum. This makes it pretty clear to me that the opponent already had the Revolt set up, so just because they didn't go for the Bearbrum, that should not be an indicator they don't have the Revolt. In fact, I would take that as just another way of confirmation that they do have it. I think it's a little weird to still do that sometimes. I've definitely had games where I've done it, and games where I've thought about doing it and not done it, because like you could end up needing the Ferrigite like during a later turn for a combo line. That's definitely happened to me before, where I use the Ferrigite like this because I've already got the Bear Brum, or because I've already got the Revolt rather instead of the Bear Brum, but then I end up awkwardly needing the Ferrigite a little bit later, and I either can't do a play or have to do a really awkward variant of a play because I don't have access to Ferrigite. But you could also make the same argument for Bear Brum. I think with this setup, with the opponent being low in hand, it probably still would have been right to go for Bear Brum anyway. Probably, I don't know. It really depends on what the opponent's last card is, but and even then, no matter what it is, you can make an argument either way. But just a little thing I wanted to point out there, just about, not even about Virtual World, I guess about Xiezhi. Of course, me being me, I can never not talk about Xiezhi when it's on screen, pretty much. So here we normal summon the Z. I mean, before we even get a chance to use this effect, the opponent is going to respond with the Revolt in order to go for the Shurg. That's totally fine with me. This is literally exactly what I wanted, because again, I'm just going to activate Kauwloon and then use the Lulu. There is still a chance the opponent's last card could be Ash. So would have liked to be able to bait that out with the Z, I mean, but it's okay because we've got Crossout Designator as our last card anyway. So it really doesn't matter whether it's Ash, Maxx, Nibiru, whatever. Even it could be Valor. Because we're running Valor, we can counter that here. So yeah, doesn't really matter what our opponent's got up their sleeve as their last card in hand. It's not going to stop us from making our now full Virtual World plays. We're going to send the Qinglong and the Jiji. Now we can use Qinglong's effect to add, I don't know, like a, whatever. It doesn't matter. Yeah, our opponent realizes that, oh, I just got baited and my opponent still has a literally full Virtual World setup. That's the power of the Punk engine, though. Again, it didn't even have to do anything. It just baited out an answer. Just that normal summoning that Z, I mean, was enough to get the Revolt out of the way, and then we didn't have anything to worry about, and we're able to full combo. So that's just one application of the Punk engine. Let's take a look at another game where we can see other applications of it. Alright, so this game is going to be playing against @Ignister, and is going to be another example of how the Punk engine helps the deck, although this time, if this is the game I'm thinking of, we'll actually be able to see the Punk engine kind of in action. Also, one thing I do want to point out is that there was a previous iteration that I think this game and maybe one or two others that we're going to see here of the deck that I was using, that this game is from. This was before I was running Ogre Dance. So I was only running 3 Z Amin and 1 Foxy Dance as my Punk engine. That's why I decided to add the Ogre Dance. This game was one of the reasons, is because like I'd like to E-Telly for the Z Amin here. But I've already got the Foxy tune, so I don't have anything to add. So that's one of the reasons I decided to add Ogre Dance, just to have another copy. Plus, if you've already got the Foxy tune in hand, then you can discard the Ogre Dance that you add for Foxy tune's effect, and you're not having to throw out like another resource there, or anything like that. So anyway, let's go ahead and carry on with the replay now. I'm going to lead with the Emergency Teleport. Now let's go ahead and get a Z. I mean, just because, like, I don't know, there's no real other use for it other than a combo piece at this point, because I've already got the Foxy tune. The other Z Amins are just going to be dead in the deck anyway, so might as well use multiple copies in order to summon our Halki Fibrax. And the discard is actually pretty nice here, because I get to throw out the Qinglong that's in my hand, and now that becomes actually a live combo piece as well. So sometimes the discard with Foxy tune can actually further help to enable, if I can get the words out in the right order, further help to enable plays in that regard. Just a very, very nice addition to the deck all in all. Definitely see why people in the comments are like, yeah, I don't know why you're using pure VW and Punk is now. Although again, Cupid Pitch is a relatively recent addition as of the, what is it, Radiant? No, Valiant Wings, I think. Is it Valiant Wings or is it Radiant Wings? The Exo Sister pack. Cupid Pitch just came out with that release, so from what I understand, this is a relatively new engine to the deck here. But yeah, again, so now we're seeing the Halka Online in action that I talked about in the profile. And again, if you're playing Zolkin and Crystal Wing, you shouldn't go for Shenshen like I did. You should actually go for the level 6, because that'll let you go into Zolkin a little bit later. Again, if you want to check out that guide on Master Duel Meta that I'm going to link down in the description, that will give you some further insight onto how those combos work. They'll have full combo guides for you down there. Since I'm using my kind of like bare bones version of the extra deck, I'm having to kind of like make my own plays as I go, so to speak. But we are still able to set up the True King plus the Chuche here. So again, the Punk engine not really further extending our plays in this particular build that I'm using, but just acting as another means of being able to utilize them. So Oh yeah, here my opponent goes to summon, like do the few plays they can. I'm still just going to use Chuche and pop their Picari, so they won't be able to summon this other Mr. I can't even remember their names that they revealed. And then at that point, the opponent just concedes as they realize, like, oh, they can't really do much of anything whatsoever. So that's basically the other application of the Punk engine, the arguably main application. The one I showed before is kind of a side application, but the main application is to be able to go into that Hulk Aurora Online that we saw for Cupid Pitch, and then for your Shen, and then you can enable your virtual world plays from there with the search from the Cupid Pitch as well. So, alright, let's go ahead and take a look at the next game now. Okay, so this game is going to be against a 60 card variant of Danger Kaiju that is going to be utilizing a Lightsworn engine, actually. Kind of cool to see. It's been a while since I've played against Lightsworn, like an actual Lightsworn deck, not just like the Lightsworn Link monster, which you see from time to time. You know, I'm a I am just a Yu-Gi boomer. I've been playing since pretty much the beginning, but that includes playing against Lightsworn in their heyday, like 2000, what would have been 7, 8, 9, 10, somewhere in that range. You know, Lightsworn was always big, so cool to see Charge and Lila again, especially this Royal Finish Lila looks pretty nice, but they target the call by, I'll just hit the Jackalope because it might be a combo piece, I don't know, just hitting something with the call by, not letting it go to waste as Lila goes to destroy it. They then use Chicken Game to draw here, and then go for the Allure. I decided to Ash the Allure and not the Charge. I didn't want to Ash the Charge because, you know, my opponent had already milled his cost, and I didn't really think a Lightsworn monster. I figured if they were playing a Lightsworn based deck, they're probably going to have a better Ash target later. Like, they could, you know, the Charge could easily be bait for like a Grass is Greener or like a Reasoning or something, so that's why I let the Charge resolve. But then as they played their turn out, and it became clear it wasn't bait, then they used the Allure. I was like, okay, if they're trying to fix their hand, I'll just go ahead and Ash the Allure. But then they have the triple tactic talents to go ahead and try to fix the hand anyway. They reveal the danger of Bigfoot. At this point, I can max C. If I can get even one draw, you know, that's fine with me. If I can get closer to, you know, some plays. And sure enough, they end up, or I end up, where is it? Here we go. I draw the Lili, so that's definitely good enough with the Kauwloon. Also, really glad they discarded this Chaos Space. I would have very much liked to Ash this, but... oh, and then we get that's right, we could even get a bonus draw during the end phase as our opponent knows a wolf, and we get a Lulu off that. So we definitely have more than enough plays for days here as we go into our next turn. So I go ahead and activate the, I went ahead and activate the Kauwloon. Getting a Qinglong here because I already have the Chuche set up. I basically activated that Kauwloon to bait out an Ash to see if my opponent had it. Because I didn't want them to Ash, you know, any of the monster effects, and, you know, the Kauwloon, they might figure my face down is a dead card, you know, etc., etc. Pretty standard stuff. So from here now we're making fairly standard virtual world plays. You know, getting back to Nyannyan, going for the Jiji, going for the Stardust Charge Warrior. Gonna set up multiple level 9. Well, actually, I'm gonna try to set up lethal here, not the not just the True King plus Chuche setup. And we even still have the Qinglong left, so we can search up the Laolao. That should make going for lethal relatively easily. I should be able to go for lethal relatively easily here, is what I meant to say. So, yep, we summon the Shen here. Oh, and then actually, this was definitely a misplay on my part to summon the Shen first, because now everything I, you know, send from here on out is going to end up getting banished, which kind of comes back as I try to use this, Jiujiu. I never know what to call this thing. But I basically can't use this because I can't send cards to the graveyard because I can't, because Shen will banish stuff. Weird that the two synchro monsters kind of counteract each other that way, but our opponent just conceded because they figured I had lethal all the same, and my plan was to just out the Bigfoot, use Stardust Charge Warrior, attack the smaller things, and then swing in for game with everything else. So we would have been able to do that fairly easily, continuing our plays from there. So, alright, let's go and take a look at the next game now. Okay, this game is going to be against Sword Soul Tenyi. Always nice to get in a win against like the top, you know, tier 1 meta deck. I was actually kind of surprised in playing this deck on ladder. I was like, well, I'll probably just bounce around wins and losses on Diamond 5 until I get 5 good games, but like I showed at the beginning of the video, I actually managed to climb up to Diamond 4 just in getting these games to show off here. So very nice. The deck is, you know, much stronger than I don't know if it's necessarily even just that it's stronger than I anticipated, but I think it's also just more that I'm like, I don't want to say I'm better at it than I thought, but like whenever I'm playing a new deck, I'm always really apprehensive to do it on ladder, just because I don't know, just because I'm afraid I'm going to mess it up, or like I'm going to tank my ranking, trying to learn a new deck. But again, being at Diamond 5, I wasn't really worried about that anymore, so I decided to go for it. And then, lo and behold, I ended up climbing instead. So who knows, maybe I should be a little bit more inclined to be playing decks I'm not like super duper familiar with and or aren't just tier 1 decks on ladder. But in any case here, yeah, we tried to max C to get in some draws, but our opponent had the Ash for it, so we're just going to have to sit and watch them do some Sword Soul plays for a little bit until we're able to drop our Nibiru on them. Gotta have the good old rock touchdown on the board. So they set a card and they went to end their main phase here. That's why I decided to go into the Nibiru from here on out. Given the token I did know would enable this Ashina, but it's still obviously the right call here. They're just going to get a Vishuda and pass anyway, so knowing that my opponent's face down is very, very, very likely the blackout that they searched, I can't just go into plays willy-nilly here, so I actually have to go to battle phase first and battle over the Vishuda. Now that they don't have a war monster, they can't use their blackout anymore, and now I'm free to make plays without fear of being interrupted by that blackout. They could still have a hand trap, but I've got the Crossout Designator in hand, so as long as it's not a Nibiru, obviously because we just used our Nibiru, then we should be good to go here. So I'll use the Amin and go for the H.U.N.K in doing so. I didn't even have to use the Foxy team because I already had the Nibiru on board, but lo and behold here, I'm really glad I played that Effect Veiler instead of a second Imperm as our opponent tries to use a Veiler on our H.U.N.K, and we're able to use the Crossout Designator as well. Yeah, it's not just decks like Sky Striker and Numeron that typically run Veiler that are the reason you want to run it for a Crossout, but it's also the fact that everybody else is also playing Veiler. By everybody else, I mostly just mean Sword Soul Tenny decks, but a lot of decks are playing Veiler just as a Crossout Designator target, but that in turn also means that they could have it as a viable hand trap as well. So yeah, if you're playing Crossout Designator like right around now, and you're not playing Virtual World, pure Virtual World, or another deck that is pretty much immune to onboard negation, you should probably be playing a Veiler to hit with your Crossout Designator, particularly if you're playing like multiple Imperms. Like I showed you with the profile, I'm just running one Imperm, one Veiler instead of two Imperm like I might normally run, and I would definitely recommend that in this current format, in this current meta that is. So alright, we've got one more game to take a look at. Let us do so. Okay, last game we're going to take a look at is Heroes. What is it with this format, this season rather, me having to bully so many hero decks? Well, not so many. I guess it's only been 2 in videos that we've shown so far, but still feels like a lot. It feels like too many. My heart always goes out to hero players, but yep, here we'll once again start with the Amin engine in order to bait out an Ashe, which we successfully did. Like, as you can see, I already have Kauwloon and Lulu and Lili. Like, there's no need for me to use the Amin here as a combo piece, but again, even when it's not needed as a combo piece, the Punk engine is still very, very useful, as now we can Ashe with, or whether we can combo with no fear of Ashe, not having to fear any repercussion from that. There is still Nibiru to consider, and it is a little bit lucky that my opponent wasn't, or didn't have Nibiru here. I don't remember if they were playing Nibiru in the deck list, or I don't know off the top of my heroes if heroes typically play Nibiru, but it is definitely something to be mindful of. But of course, like, to a certain degree, like, they either have it or they don't, right? And what I mean by that is, like, we can't just not make plays because they might have Nibiru, because then obviously we don't make plays and our opponent makes plays and then we lose because, well, we didn't have anything on board because we didn't make plays. So it's a very roundabout way of saying, like, you can't just constantly live in fear of the unknown just because you don't have an answer for it. Like, if they have the Nibiru, they have it. Even if they had the Nibiru, if they used it early enough here, we still had like the Laolao in hand that we might have been able to pull off a use with that. I don't know, who knows, but because they don't have anything here, we can just go into not only the True King plus the Chuche here, but also a Ptolemy to wheel back. Since we're going to get back another virtual monster anyway with Jiji, I decided to add back the Amin with Ptolemy M7 for potential use next turn. Or the Lili, sorry, not that. Oh yeah, no, we add the Lili back with the Jiji's effect. I did say that right. So, yeah, during the draw phase, we go to use the True King's effect, and then, of course, the opponent concedes as they realize they're not going to be able to do anything, and I've got a True King and a Ptolemy and all this stuff I've been wheeling back to my hand as well. Now, once again, I do want to clarify that if you are, like with that hand in particular, I'm pretty sure if I were playing Zolkin and Crystal Wing, I would have been able to, like, pull off Zolkin, Crystal Wing, and True King and Chuche. I think that was a setup where that was doable, but I don't know the combo lines of that quite extensively enough to know that off the top of my head. So, Yep, that's all I've got for games here. Let's just go ahead and move on now to the outro. Alright everybody, I want to thank everyone for watching this video, especially all the way to the very end. That definitely means a lot to me. It is a great way to support the channel, as well as commenting and subscribing. I'm appreciative to those who are doing that, because that is yet another way that is good to support the channel there. Yeah, Virtual World. I really like this deck, and I kind of talked about this a little bit in the last videos where I played it, but I just really hope that Adventures and Flows don't end up pushing this deck out of the format. I'm glad I was able to get in a little bit of gameplay with it here before that pack comes out. Again, actually, at the time that I'm recording this, I don't think we've had, which is the second night of the season, I don't think we've had an official announcement just yet as to the release of the... I should just look up the name of it. I think it's called Wandering Travelers. And in fact, I'm very sure that's what it's called, the pack with Adventures and Flows. But yeah, I think when that pack comes out and the format develops in that way, I feel like Virtual World, even though they still have True King, they might still just end up getting pushed out of the format a little bit, much in the way that Adamanticipators did, even though they still had 3 Block Dragon. But I guess we'll just have to wait and see. But in any case, I was glad to get in at least some out of laddering with it here this season. Again, didn't really expect to do any significant amount of climbing with it. I guess 1 rank isn't that significant, but still Diamond 5 to 4 with a deck I'm brand new to playing. It's not too shabby if I do say so myself, if I may toot my own horn a little bit here. But I think that's going to do it for me here. So without further ado, this is Xlex signing off. Hope you guys have a fantastic day.